"You're not welcome at Christmas until you say sorry," my parents said, so I shut off the money they lived on. The timestamp read 11:51 p.m. Outside, Denver was disappearing under a blizzard, the kind that swallows sound and leaves the world white and wordless. Inside my apartment, the only glow came from my phone. Cold, blue, unforgiving. The message from my mother, Susan, sat there like a court ruling already stamped and sealed. "Your father and I have decided. If you're not paying for Chloe's engagement party, don't bother showing up to the Aspen Gala. You're tearing this family apart." I barely had time to inhale before another notification slid across the screen. Instagram. My sister Chloe had posted a photo of the venue. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, white roses everywhere. The caption was sharp and deliberate. "Finally removed the negative energy. Blessed." I looked up at the black mirror of my laptop screen and saw my reflection staring back at me, calm, unreadable. I waited for the tears. I waited for the panic. I waited for the familiar guilt. Nothing came. What settled in instead was clarity, cold and precise. I didn't text back. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I opened my laptop. "Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the one funding the family fantasy while being treated like the villain in it? Comment where you're listening from. I want to know who understands this kind of quiet betrayal." My apartment thermostat was set to 62 degrees. A habit born years ago when I started subsidizing the heating bill of a 5-bedroom house in Aspen that I didn't even live in. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, but my hands stayed bare over the keyboard. They weren't shaking. They were steady, like a surgeon about to operate. I logged into the family's shared administrative dashboard, the system I built to help out. In reality, it was a digital blueprint of my own exploitation. Password vaults, autopay chains, emergency credit lines, utility accounts, lease agreements. All roads led back to me. I started with my father, Richard. There it was, emergency card. Opened 3 years ago for what he called life or death situations. I pulled up the last 30 days of transactions. Liquor store, cigar lounge, high-end steakhouse, private club tab, another liquor store. Nearly $1,000. Not a hospital charge. Not a pharmacy receipt. Not a single emergency. Just indulgence, financed by my overtime. I didn't feel rage. I felt like an auditor correcting a mistake. I clicked. Card management. Then report lost or stolen. Then, close account permanently. A confirmation window appeared. "Are you sure?" "Yes." One click. The digital card turned gray. Somewhere in Aspen, the piece of plastic in his wallet became nothing more than decorative trash. Next, Chloe. I opened the automotive leasing portal. The pearl-white luxury SUV she paraded around town? Legally mine. I had signed because her credit score couldn't survive a background check. She had promised to start paying once things stabilized. 14 months. 0 payments. The next installment was due tomorrow. Instead of clicking make payment, I hovered over a different option. Lease termination. The early termination fee flashed on screen. Heavy, painful. Still cheaper than funding my own humiliation. I selected voluntary surrender. Pickup address. My parents' driveway. Tow date. Monday morning. Confirmation window. "Are you certain you want to end this agreement?" I didn't type the answer. I whispered it. Yes. By Monday, that SUV would no longer be part of her aesthetic. Finally, the house. The gala was happening right now, glittering, glowing, humming with champagne laughter. That warmth, that light, that music, all of it ran through accounts in my name. Gas, electric, pay, event vendor deposit. I opened the utility dashboard. For years, I had been the silent infrastructure of their luxury. Tonight, I became the architect of its blackout. I hovered over the final tab. Service management. No screaming. No speeches. No dramatic confrontations. Just quiet administrative correction. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's logistical. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop paying for the party. I didn't cut the lights. That would have been dramatic. Legal. Temporary. I chose something cleaner. I logged into the utility account. The one tied to my debit card, the one quietly underwriting their 5-bedroom fantasy. I didn't touch the power switch. I went to billing. Primary checking account, removed. Backup savings card, deleted. Paperless billing? Notifications? Switched to mail only. Payment method? Cash on delivery. The next bill wouldn't disappear silently into my bank account like it always had. It would arrive in their mailbox, thick, red-stamped, unapologetic. For the first time, the cost of their lifestyle would have weight. I leaned back in my chair. The only light left in the room was my laptop's sleep indicator, blinking slow and steady like a pulse. The silence in my apartment usually felt like abandonment. Tonight it felt like control. In less than 12 minutes, I had severed the 3 arteries feeding their illusion. No screaming. No dramatic speeches. Just administrative precision. Outside, the wind clawed at the windows. For years, storms terrified me. Tonight, I wasn't afraid of it. I was it. People love to ask, how did you let it get this bad? They look at the total, $82,000 over 10 years, and decide you must have been foolish. Weak. Desperate for approval. But they don't understand how normalized cruelty works. No one wakes up one morning and volunteers to bankroll people who resent them. It happens in increments. In size. In glances. In guilt. It's the boiling frog theory. Except the water was my bank account, and the temperature rose one emergency at a time. I remember the first real burn. 5 years ago. Richard needed emergency back surgery. No insurance because he didn't trust the system. The bill came in at $25,000. I was 24. Driving a dented Honda Civic with a bumper taped into place. Eating ramen most nights. Saving every spare dollar like it was oxygen. They didn't ask me for the money. They didn't have to. My mother, Susan, cried at the kitchen table. Not loud, just enough. Wet eyes. Trembling lips. Silent accusation. Richard lay in his recliner, groaning loudly about wheelchairs and ruined futures and how tragic it would be if pride kept him from walking again. The air in that house got heavy. I paid it. 1 wire transfer. Entire savings account. Gone. I thought I was buying relief. I thought I was buying gratitude. I thought I was buying love. I wasn't buying anything. I was paying a tax for existing under their roof. There was no thank you. Just a quiet recalibration of expectation. She'll handle it. And I did. Then came Chloe's vision. 2 years ago, she decided she was launching a lifestyle brand. She invited me to dinner, which I paid for, and delivered a presentation between sips of wine. Words like disruption and aesthetic and global reach floated across the table. The business plan was vapor. No product sourcing. No logistics. No experience. No numbers that survived 5 minutes of scrutiny. I knew it was fantasy. But Richard and Susan circled like attorneys building a case. You're jealous. You don't believe in her because you're stuck in a corporate cage. You've always hated seeing her shine. It wasn't about the business. It was about my role. I was the practical one. The reliable one. The wallet. They wore me down until writing the check felt easier than defending myself. $30,000. 6 months later, the brand dissolved into nothing. No launch. No inventory. No accountability. The money evaporated like steam. That's the trap. You think if you give enough, sacrifice enough, they'll finally see you. That the ledger will balance emotionally. But you're not filling a void in them. You're digging one beneath yourself. Sitting there in the cold glow of my apartment, I understood something that should have been obvious years ago. This wasn't accidental. I had been conditioned for it. Since childhood, my value had always been transactional. Chloe was loved for being beautiful. I was tolerated for being useful. And the moment I stopped being useful, I became disposable. Tonight was the first night I chose to be something else. Richard was celebrated for being the patriarch. I was tolerated for being practical. He was the crown. I was the coverage plan. An insurance policy they activated whenever life got inconvenient. But here's the flaw in the boiling frog metaphor. Eventually, even the most conditioned creature recognizes the heat. Last night's text wasn't just cruel. It was the final degree. The water didn't simmer anymore. It flashed to steam. And instead of boiling alive, the frog flipped the pot. Morning broke over Denver, the skyline glowing behind a layer of blinding white slush. The storm outside had passed. The one inside my phone was just getting started. Notifications were muted, but I could see the avalanche gathering on my lock screen. 35 missed calls. 62 text messages. I didn't rush to open them. I made coffee first. But no sugar. Then I pressed play on the first voicemail. Chloe. In the background, I could hear the delicate chime of a bridal boutique door, the murmur of consultants, the soft rustle of silk. Her voice cut through it all, high, frantic, offended. You embarrassed me in front of the consultant. The card was declined. Declined. Do you know what that feels like? Fix this. Now. No confusion. No concern. Nor are you okay? Just outrage that the faucet had stopped running. Next, Susan. Her voice messages were always theatrical, breathy, trembling, soaked in implication. Emma, you're killing him. He's clutching his chest. He looks gray. If your father has another heart attack, that's on you. Send the gal money back. We have guests coming. Please don't be a monster. A monster. As I stopped paying. Richard didn't call. He sent a photo. A tight shot of his blood pressure monitor. 180/110. Underneath, one line. Look at what you're doing to this family. I sat at my kitchen table, steam rising from my mug, and scrolled. I searched the messages for something specific. Are you okay? What happened? Can we talk? Nothing. Those phrases didn't exist in their language. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was infrastructure. An appliance. When a toaster stops working, you don't ask it about its feelings. You smack it, shake it, curse it, until it functions again. For the first time in 29 years, I didn't feel the reflex to fix it. No guilt crawled up my spine. No panic told me to apologize. No urgency to wire money and restore peace. Just stillness. A quiet, almost clinical detachment. I realized something unsettling. I had spent my entire life pre-brewing their coffee in my mind. Anticipating their crises. Forecasting their moods. Adjusting my life to regulate theirs. I took another sip of my own coffee. It was bitter. It was hot. It was mine. And I decided I was done making theirs. I didn't block their numbers. Blocking would have been emotional, reactive. This wasn't emotional. It was structural. I muted notifications and opened a new browser window. In my world, when a division hemorrhages money and refuses accountability, you don't argue with management. You audit. I put on my coat and walked 3 blocks to the office supply store. Past greeting cards. Past pastel planners. Past glitter and wrapping paper. Straight to organization. I bought a 3-inch heavy-duty binder. Red. Not decorative red. Emergency red. Stop sign red. I added reinforced dividers. Highlighters. A heavy-duty hole punch. When I got home, I didn't hesitate. I printed everything. The printer ran for 45 straight minutes, humming, spitting out a decade of proof. 10 years of bank statements, credit card histories, wire confirmations, Venmo transfers, lease agreements, utility payments. The stack grew thick and warm beside me. $82,000 of quiet obedience. I punched holes into every sheet. Slide, click, slide, click. Each page locked into place. This wasn't a meltdown. It was documentation. If they wanted a villain, I would bring receipts. And for the first time in my life, the numbers weren't there to justify giving more. They were there to justify stopping. I sorted everything with the precision of someone assembling a case file. Year first. Then recipient. 2018, back surgery. 2020, startup investment. 2022, mortgage rescue. Each stack slid into the binder. The metal rings snapped shut with a sharp final click, the sound of something contained, almost like a cell door locking. On the spine, in thick black permanent marker, I wrote 2 words. Project Independence. 4 years, my labor had been invisible. Late-night transfers, silent bailouts, autopay lifelines. On a screen it felt abstract. Just numbers shifting between accounts. But in physical form? 3 inches thick. 4 pounds heavy. It wasn't abstract anymore. It was evidence. A monument built from my own compliance. Then I made a call. Sir. A forensic accountant I'd worked with years ago. Meticulous, unflinching, allergic to drama. We skipped the pleasantries. I need you to trace a wire, I said. 2 years ago. $30,000. Supposedly sent to a medical collections agency in Denver. I gave her the routing number. The date. The reference code. She didn't ask why I was auditing my own father. That's why I called her. Give me 24 hours, she said. Next, I opened a blank document. This wasn't a sister-to-sister message. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't reactive. It was procedural. Notice of voluntary surrender. I cited the lease agreement. Documented 14 months of missed payments. Included the scheduled repossession date. Attached a copy of the tow authorization. There was no love at the bottom. I signed it. Emma Millerly. 3 copies. 1 for my records. 1 for the glove compartment. 1 for the red binder. I ran my hand over the smooth plastic cover. For years they told me I was dramatic. Paranoid. Imagining slights that weren't there. But numbers don't imagine. Spreadsheets don't gaslight. Math doesn't manipulate tone. The binder wasn't just paper. It was armor. And tomorrow night at the gala, it wouldn't just protect me. It would cut. 24 hours later my phone rang. I answered on the first vibration, pen poised over a legal pad. Tell me. There was a pause, not technical silence but human hesitation. The kind that precedes something irreversible. Emma, she said quietly, you're sitting down, right? I'm standing. Just say it. The $30,000 wire. It didn't go to a medical collections agency. My grip tightened around the pen. It went to a holding account for a title company in downtown Denver. The room tilted slightly like the floor had shifted under its own weight. A title company for what? I asked. I pulled public property records that matched the transfer date, she continued. 2 days after you sent that money, a down payment of exactly $30,000 was recorded. For what property? A unit at the Glassworks. Luxury condo building. In the Lodo district. She inhaled. The deed isn't in your father's name, Emma. The world narrowed. It's in Chloe's. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't scream. A wave of nausea rose sharp and acidic, but I swallowed it. Of course it wasn't medical debt. Of course it wasn't an emergency. It was equity. My emergency fund had become her real estate portfolio. And suddenly the binder on my desk didn't feel heavy enough. I walked to the window and stared out over the skyline of Denver. 2 years ago Richard had called me crying. Not sniffles. Not theatrics. Full shaking sobs. He said surgeons were threatening collections. He said his pension could be garnished. He said he was scared. I had believed him. I emptied my emergency fund in a single transfer. Cancelled a vacation I had saved 2 years for. Drove through a brutal winter in a car with no heat so I could rebuild what I'd drained. I told myself it was temporary. That sacrifice was what daughters did. And he hadn't spent a cent of it on his back. He had taken my fear, my love, and converted it into a down payment with a mountain view. For her. Are you sure? I asked Sarah even though my voice already knew the answer. I'm looking at the deed, she replied. Richard is listed as guarantor. Chloe is primary owner. The down payment matches your transfer exactly. Exactly. Send me everything. The email hit my inbox 10 seconds later. I opened the attachment. Official county record. Owner, Chloe Miller. Property value, $600,000. Her signature curled across the bottom, loopy, careless, almost playful. I had paid $30,000 for that signature to exist. This wasn't favoritism anymore. This wasn't golden child syndrome. This was calculated deception. He had looked me in the eye, weaponized his mortality, and siphoned my savings to buy her real estate. I printed the deed. The page was still warm when I fed it through the hole punch. 3 clean circles. I opened the red binder to the 2020 tab. On top, my wire transfer receipt. Directly above it, the condo deed. The nausea drained out of me, replaced by something colder. Heavier. Resolve settled into my spine like steel being poured into a mold. They thought I was a resentful daughter cutting off the allowance. They had no idea I had just found the smoking gun. I didn't drive to Aspen. I didn't put on a gown. And I didn't storm the ballroom. That would have given them what they wanted. A spectacle. A villain. A hysterical daughter ruining their event. I poured a glass of cheap wine and opened my laptop. Chloe was live. Streaming in high definition to 12,000 followers. The ballroom glowed gold. A jazz trio played softly in the corner. Crystal chandeliers refracted light like stars. Richard stood near the bar in a tuxedo worth more than my first car, laughing too loudly. Susan floated between guests with champagne, performing benevolence. And Chloe, center frame, twirled in white, telling the internet how blessed she felt. How grateful she was for family, for generosity, for love. It was flawless theater. But power built on someone else's money is fragile. A house of cards in a wind tunnel. All it takes is one open door. At 8:15 p.m. the door opened. A man stepped into the frame. Not a guest. Not a friend. A courier from a private process service. Dark uniform, expression neutral, movements precise. He didn't glance at the camera. He walked straight through the crowd, parting black tie guests without apology. The jazz faltered. Chloe stopped mid-spin. The live stream comments started firing. Who is that? Is this part of the show? The courier stopped in front of Richard. He handed him a heavy package. No bow. No ribbon. A red binder. Then he turned to Chloe and handed her a tablet. I picked up my phone, opened the family group chat, and typed one sentence. Check the tablet. Page 4. Condo down payment. I hit send. On my screen, I watched the notification appear on Chloe's phone. The same phone she was using to broadcast her perfect golden night. She frowned. Confused. Then she glanced at the tablet the courier had placed in her hands. At the same moment Richard opened the red binder. And I saw it happen. Not slowly. Not dawning. Easily. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. He flipped through the first pages. Bank statements. Liquor store transactions. Cigar lounges. Steakhouses. Then the audit. The $30,000 wire transfer. The title company. The condo deed. Susan lunged for the binder, her champagne smile cracking into something feral and frantic. She tried to close it, to fold it, to hide it from wandering eyes. But the damage was already done. Chloe's reaction was quieter. More devastating. She stared at the deed glowing on the tablet, her name in black ink. The down payment traced back to my account. The lie about medical debt exposed in bulletproof timestamps. Then she looked up. At the camera. At the guests. At the comment section scrolling in real time. What's going on? Why does that say condo? Wait, wasn't that medical debt? She realized the stream was still live. She realized the whispers were multiplying. She realized the story they had rehearsed for 2 years had just collapsed. This is the problem with borrowed power. When your identity is funded by money you didn't earn, and worse, money obtained by deception, you're always one audit away from exposure. 5 minutes earlier they were royalty in rented tuxedos. Without my silence propping them up, they were just tenants in a lie. Chloe lunged for the phone. The screen went black. The performance ended mid-scene. In my apartment the quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt judicial. Like a gavel striking wood. The fallout wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. The next morning Richard called. He reached a disconnected line. At 9 a.m. I had changed my number. The luxury SUV was hoisted onto a flatbed that afternoon, pearl white paint gleaming as it left the driveway for the last time. 3 days later, I received confirmation from the leasing agency while eating lunch. By the end of the week, the condo in downtown Denver was listed for sale. They needed liquidity. Fast. Pay back what I had exposed, or invite a fraud investigation into their front door. I sat in my living room and checked my account balance. It was lighter by $82,000. That money was gone. Burned on the altar of their entitlement. I would never see it again. But as I looked around my quiet, slightly too cold apartment, I understood something. I hadn't lost $82,000. I had bought my autonomy. For the first time in a decade, my income belonged to me. I opened my laptop one more time. Not their accounts. Not the dashboard. A travel site. I booked a small cabin in the mountains for next weekend. Not in Aspen. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere without signal. Just snow. Trees. Silence that didn't demand anything from me. Silence I had earned. And if you're reading this, if you're the fixer, the peacekeeper, the invisible child who keeps the lights on and the crises contained, listen carefully. You cannot purchase love. It is not a subscription. You cannot Venmo your way into being valued by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The most expensive bill you will ever pay is the one that costs your dignity. I spent 10 years trying to be their safety net. They used it like a noose. Stop waiting for the thank you. It isn't coming. Close the account. Change the number. Let the calls ring out. You are not a wallet. You are not a backup plan. You are a person. And you are allowed to be free. If this story feels uncomfortably familiar, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Even silent ATMs have the right to shut down. You are not alone.